So when it comes to corporations, there's a lot of lingo, there's a lot of terminology that's, related to corporations and to business. And in this video, I'm just going to cover some of those terms so that you're aware of those if you are starting a corporation or you already own a corporation. So for starters, corporation, an easy way to remember what a corporation is and what it means is think of the word corp. So in English, corpse means body, corporal means pertaining to the body. In other European languages, the same thing. That word corp or words similar to it mean body. So to incorporate means to embody. You're basically creating like a separate legal body that's separate from you, the human entity. So it is a separate legal entity from you, the owner or shareholder is what you would call it in the case of a corporation, because a corporation has a formal share structure where in order to actually be the owner of the corporation, you need to own shares. So some of the terms that I wanted to cover today would be things like revival, restoral, continuance, extraprovincial registration, and dissolution. So for starters, restoral. When a corporation has become inactive because it hasn't filed its annual renewals, it gets inactivated or struck off. And in order to, restore that business, you formally do a restoral, which typically requires a fee. And that basically just makes an inactive corporation active again. So typically that's not something you want to have to do. You want to make sure you're filing your annual renewals for your corporation with your corporate registry on time so that it doesn't get inactive or struck off so that you don't have to do a restoral. Now the next thing is dissolution, or to dissolve a corporation. Basically means to end the existence of that corporation. Because a corporation is a separate legal entity, it doesn't just end unless someone ends it. So dissolution, or to dissolve a corporation, is to end the existence of that corporation so that not only is it not active, but it's no longer really in existence. So if you started a corporation and you're totally done with it, you're not going to operate that business anymore, or at least not operate that business through that corporation anymore, you're not going to sell it or transfer it or anything, then you'll probably want to do dissolution and dissolve the corporation. Now the next thing, and this is related to dissolution, is a revival. And it's kind of similar to a restoral, but a restoral is just for an inactive or struck off corporation, whereas a revival is for a corporation that has been dissolved. So think of revival like you're bringing it back to life. So dissolution, you kind of kill the business. Revival is a process to bring that, previously dissolved corporation back to life and make it active again. So typically to dissolve a business, that's something you have to do manually, and therefore revival only comes after that. You wouldn't do a restoral to a dissolved corporation. Now the next thing is continuance. So this one is interesting because to do a continuation of a corporation sounds like you're kind of just continuing into another jurisdiction, and that is what it's for. But actually a continuance is kind of a transfer where you're moving from one jurisdiction to another, not just expanding. So if you start a corporation in Canada in the province of British Columbia, and then maybe you're moving to Alberta and you want to take your corporation with you, and you no longer really need it active in British Columbia, you can do a continuance or a continuation into Alberta, which basically transfers your corporation from a BC corporation to an Alberta corporation. So that can be useful if you no longer are conducting business in that initial province where you first incorporated the business. Now, similar to that, only slightly different, would be what's called an extraprovincial registration. So in that same example where maybe you start out your business as a British Columbia corporation, and then you decide not to move to Alberta, but you decide to expand the business to Alberta and maybe Saskatchewan, where your headquarters are still in BC, you're still operating, conducting business in BC, but now you have a secondary store or office or employees in Alberta, and then the same thing in Saskatchewan. You don't do a continuance because a continuance is transferring. You do an expansion, and the expansion is called an extraprovincial registration of your corporation. So your British Columbia corporation extra-provincially registers in Alberta and Saskatchewan so that it's active as a corporation in those provinces as well. So hopefully that was useful and provided some clarity on those topics, those terms. If you enjoyed the video, please click like, and feel free to subscribe to my YouTube channel here, where I currently have over 265 videos that cover business management and business startup topics.